I was recently watching Monsters Inc., Toy Story 2, in fact, a bunch of the Pixar films, and a lot of the earlier ones, especially like pretty much pre-Wall-E, so pre-2008, so pretty much for like their first almost 15 years, they had been doing a lot of bloopers at the end of their films, which I thought was really funny. You know, obviously as a kid, you know, you don't want to have to sit through the credits, you want to just skip it and go on to watch any movie. But to really appreciate the actual work and effort that was put into it, they have these bloopers that play, which is really nice. Like how Finding Nemo doesn't have bloopers, it has like a post-credit scene. But it does have like the fish and other characters swimming through the water as the credits go up. You even have Mike Wazowski swimming through the water there. It's nice little Easter eggs and references, whatever, as they like to do. But in their bloopers, they actually have a feel to it that, for me, always made the films feel more real, which I think was a nice effect, given how they were all CG animated. So, I kind of just want to talk about that. Mostly I want to talk about Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story 2, because I think they have the best bloopers, especially because, you know, Toy Story 2 has the ones where you'll, outside of one of my favourite being the Bugs Life ones, where you get the two cast being like, we're cast on Toy Story 2, well, when's our scene coming up? I think they're rolling right now, and Buzz comes through and slaps them away. It's like, there's the location over there, and they keep going. I like that, it's a good gag. It's more the Stinky Pete scene where I think he farts in his box, and he's like, oh, that really stinks, and you have like the boom mic drop down and everything, and people start laughing behind the scenes as if the director and all that are actually there. And it always made me think, they obviously wrote all this stuff up, got the cast to say all these lines, and then directed it as a blooper, like intentionally, which makes it kind of even more kind of fourth wall breaking and comical as a whole, because it's all animated. You can't get a blooper when it's animated unless someone happens to say a goofy line whilst they're recording, and they just edit that in later, but just add an animation to it, or an animatic or whatever. And with Monsters Inc., they had a lot of those ones as well, where it was fourth wall breaking, where you had a lot of the, you know, the camera crew and whatever, or someone, I think Sully runs into the camera and stuff like that. All these things to make it seem more real, and I like that, because those films, as it is, usually strive for visually to make it seem like, you know, there's actually a camera there, and these characters are real. There's a scene, I think, in Monsters, Inc., where I'm pretty sure it's either Sully or Mike. I think it's Mike. He's running towards the camera and he jumps over it. There's nothing there in his world, but he jumps over the camera because it's there in the film, kind of deal, you know? But it's not actually there. And so these bloopers always gave me the intended effect as a kid that it made it seem, again, more real. And I just really appreciate that. You don't get that in Pixar films anymore. I don't know if that's because Disney took over and was like, no, we're not doing that shit anymore. It's dumb. It's a waste of our time. It's like, yeah, but you do short films. But I guess their short films now are just don't have anyone talking, just do a bunch of cute things of animals or whatever because it's cheaper. I think. I don't know. But that's what they do now. They don't have people talking anymore. Anyway. And so it's just, it always makes it, you know, do you have that, do you get that when you're watching these Pixar films, if you've watched them, and you're watching these bloopers, like, obviously you have the intended effect of, oh, it's a funny riff on this particular scene, or this particular character, or these characters from another film that are crossing over into here just in this period here, like how in Monsters, Inc., when Sully and Mike are walking to the street corner, and there's that really tall chicken dude, but it's the casting version, so it's Rex from Toy Story. And he's like, did I get the part? You know, and they're like, oh, we'll call you next week, you know. Like, it's all this stuff to make not just the universe feel more connected, and that all these films that you're watching have more enjoyment to it, because they might have this aspect of they cross over, which of course there is that Pixar theory where every single Pixar film is related in some Easter egg way. But, or like it's all in the same universe, or however the theory goes. I looked into the theory a few years ago, I haven't remembered much of the specifics. Nevertheless, I still find it really remarkable that they do that, or that they did that. And maybe that's the problem now. I mean, I know that I'm obviously an adult now. I don't need to be watching Pixar films, but they are art, and I like art, So fuck you if you think I shouldn't be watching cartoons. Or in this case, animated films. Because they are animated films. Like, my mum, for example, will be okay with me watching Toy Story, but she'll still be like, oh, it's a kid's film. But then I want to show her another animated film like the Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. She'll be like, no, it's for kids. I'm like, what? So you're fine with watching Toy Story? It's like, yeah, well, there's nostalgia of you guys watching it as kids, so of course we watched it too, and we liked it. It's like, but this is the same fucking thing. It's just for a newer generation with better animation. So it's just, that fucking argument aside, the point still lies is the fact that there's this nice embodiment of realism within these films. I know, of course, most of them don't even have human characters, toys, monsters, stuff that computers can generate better than humans can. Nevertheless, it's just fun that they just do, or that they did this stuff, because they don't do it anymore. I don't remember the last time I saw a blooper reel from a Pixar film. They didn't do it in Toy Story 2. No, they didn't do it in Toy Story 4. I don't think they did it in Toy Story 3 either. I know that they had little end credit scenes, but maybe it's because of that. Maybe it's they thought they had this finale to it. But they'll have these post-credit scenes now instead of having bloopers. But what happened to the bloopers? Why don't they do bloopers anymore? I still think it's probably because Disney came in and bought them out and whatever. But it's why? Why don't they do bloopers anymore? I used to love it. Outside of it being a funny final gag thing, even Monsters, Inc. had the bloopers. But then, they also had the fucking musical, which was in the fucking universe of the film. So it's you have the musical after the bloopers, but it's still, one's not in the continuity, but the other one is. One's in, the behind-the-scenes blooper continuity, but one's in the actual narrative continuity. They have fun like that, but apparently we can't have, bloopers anymore in these movies. They leave it to, blooper reels that are actually on the Blu-rays. I'm like, what's the point of that? I'm going to get the Blu-ray anyway for the special features and to get the film, but it's why can't some of those be in the film, in the credits? Maybe it's because there are so many people that they have to credit now these days, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm not completely disappointed. It just seems like Pixar's kind of lost its touch. Not because of that, but I feel like that's a main thing for me. I always used to love watching the film. You'd have this whole heartfelt narrative, and by the end of it, you'd feel resolved. And then you get bloopers. And it's bloopers, I love bloopers. They're funny, Especially as a kid, they were hilarious. I still find them really amusing now, It's good stuff. But yeah. I don't know, it's and you can't make the argument that it's it's because it takes away from the feeling of the end of the film. It's but they have fucking post-credit scenes. Doesn't that take away from the feeling of the film, if you cut out the Monsters, Inc. bloopers, you still have the musical, even though it's in that smaller box on the rest of the screen. But, something like Toy Story 4 has a really resonant ending, and then you've got a post-credit scene with Forky. Did you really think that was was that appropriate, So I think that argument is kind of, null and void. But yeah, it's just, look, it's just a thought I had, because it's I'm watching these films, I'm really enjoying them for what they are, what they mean, and then having this extra thing of these blooper reels, instead of, you can still get the blooper reels and the special features for those original films, but it's and because you can get them on a bigger screen too. But it's just so much more fun, watching it, and then they just appear in the film, and you just start laughing, and you're just oh, it was so funny when that happened, and all this kind of stuff. It's it's good stuff, I know that, I'm pretty sure Disney deleted one of the bloopers from Toy Story 2, which was, slightly creepy as, what was his name, the Stinky Pete, the prospector, had 2 Barbie dolls in his box and was come back next week, I'll give you some tips on how to become a good movie star. It's because, as if he's a big actor in the movie industry, and it's a riff on that kind of stuff, which obviously is not appropriate anymore, but it's would it have been appropriate then? I didn't get it. I kind of got it then as a kid. I get it obviously a lot more as an adult, realizing what it all means. It's all for the gag, but at the same time, it's if fucking Pixar's riffing on this shit, I don't know, but it's a blooper, it's funny, because sometimes you just gotta have a laugh after a good film. So yeah, look, I know that there are obviously other films in real life films where bloopers aren't a good idea, say like that Peter Sellers one, which apparently like lost him the Oscar because after this really dramatic performance, you get this blooper reel in the credits where they just ruin like the whole dramatic atmosphere of the film. It's like, that was probably a bad idea. In fact, it definitely was a bad idea. But nevertheless, when it comes to Pixar films, I know, yeah, that's still the argument. Do we need the bloopers in the final credits? Doesn't matter, I guess. Realistically, you should be looking at the artwork of the background and looking through the credits, waiting for that post-credit scene or whatever that might come about. Doesn't really matter. Because that's just modern era version of Pixar since 2008. But at the same time, it's like, with WALL-E, you still have those narrative things in the background, of the credits. But, with those original films, especially Toy Story 2 and Monsters, Inc., it really emphasized this realism, and maybe just having that connectiveness made the films more, immersive, especially as a kid. You watch this film, you wish you were in this universe, and then you get to see this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff, even though it's obviously all fake as a blooper because it's all scripted and whatever. But it makes it seem like these characters can exist in this real world, even if you don't inherently understand a boom mic falling down, or the camera getting knocked over and then saying, "Oh my god, are you okay? Sorry," but, acting as if there's a real life crew. It's cool, especially as a film nerd myself, being someone who makes film, watches film, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, to see that kind of thing in an animated film when they don't need it, just adds more to it. And, yeah, look, that's all I really have to say on the topic. There's not much of a deep dive to be had about it. It's simply put, I miss those bloopers. But like at the same time, you got to have the appropriate film for it. I don't think a film like Coco could have it. It's possible, but it's not really a wholeheartedly comedic-natured story. It's a dramatically led one. But if you had maybe Toy Story 3 or 4 could have done it, even though they're probably still a bit more dramatic than they are cartoony adventures, Actually, that's probably why. I think because they stopped doing those more cartoony adventure stuff, they kind of stopped doing those blooper reels. Like, they didn't have that for The Incredibles, but at the same time, that's probably a director's choice, whereas the people who were more in charge of the Toy Story ones and Monsters, Inc. and stuff were like, this is more so intended for kids as well, like, give them something else to enjoy in the post-credits, or just in the credits as a whole. So, yeah, I guess also because modern generations do streaming and stuff like that, we don't really pay attention to credits. Most streaming services cut them out. So, if I'm watching Disney Plus, are they going to be, is the Monsters, Inc. bloopers going to be cut out? Is it just going to be like, oh, here's a suggestion for this other film, and like you've got this tiny box on your screen which is the actual film, and in that tiny box is a smaller box which actually has the blooper reel, and then the rest of the screen is like, you just watched Monsters, Inc., now watch Monsters, Inc. University, It's like, but credits, I don't know. That's a whole different story. Anyway, that's all my thoughts on this. What do you think? Do you miss those bloopers? Do you think that they added realism to the film? I think that they did, even though of course they're animated, but it makes it seem more realistic at least. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Outside of that, thank you so much for watching this Telecreations video. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. And we'll see you next time. I've probably got playlists and videos listed up on the screen and the subscribe button. Outside of that, see you next time. Adios. Apparently I'm a wiggle now. What? What's going on? Help me.